Happy Friday, Illini fans. It is time for the Illinicast, part of the Armchair Illini Network, and we have a big one coming up. I know it's Purdue, but Purdue has kind of had Illinois' number as of late, and that includes Mr. Ryan Walters as he took over for the Purdue Boilermakers last year, getting that win against Illinois with some silly mistakes that Illinois made that cost Illinois probably the matchup early on, but we have a big one for the Big Ten. And now, with Illinois' position, every game is a big game because we're still technically in the college football playoff conversation. So let's talk a little bit about this. But first, introduce Sonny Verma, my amazing co host of the Illini Cast. Sonny, how are things in beautiful Texas?
Hot, still very, very hot. But you know what? Coming out of the bye week, if you told us in the off season that we'd be talking about 4-1, I'd be super okay with it, super content with it. And then seeing Purdue struggle this season, being arguably the worst FBS team in the country, I just hope we take care of business tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I knew Ryan Walters had some big shoes to fill with Jeff Brom, and that roster was going to turn over in a big way this year. But I did not expect Ryan Walters and Purdue to be this bad this quickly. But that's the way of the jungle in the Big Ten. If you aren't recruiting at a high level in the transfer portal, then that's going to be lead to some major problems. And Purdue, outside of Hudson Card, who isn't going to play, if you haven't heard that, Illini fans, Hudson Card out for the game Saturdays with a concussion. He will go to a new freshman quarterback in there for Purdue against Illinois. So not your father's Boilermakers that you're used to from the Jeff Brom years. So this is going to be a bad Purdue team. And I'm kind of excited to see Illinois just take care of business, 22.5 point favorites.
I hope so. Yeah, I mean we should. I had this conversation earlier. Like, if somehow this game went the wrong way, this would be by far the worst loss of the Brett era. So this is a game which I know he circled. I almost wonder if Brett wishes that Purdue wasn't so bad. Like, in the sense, like, he definitely does not want Illinois to overlook this game coming up, especially since we have Michigan the following week. Huge rivalry game. I talked about it in an earlier episode of Locked On Illini today. There's so much, with Purdue being our locked-in rival, then being 90 miles away from campus, from Champaign, and the fact that we essentially battle for all the same type of recruits, it matters. And so usually I'm the type that's always content. If it's a 1 point victory, I'm good with it. I don't want a 1 point victory tomorrow. I want to win by 40. I want to win by 30 plus points. I want to send a message. I want Purdue fans to feel the same way I felt last year after 44-19.
Yeah, you want to make the enemy feel just absolutely garbage. Like, you want to make them question their entire existence as a fan base, similar to Iowa and Illinois back in the day, that 63 to nothing game that Illinois fans had to suffer through in Memorial Stadium. You want Purdue to question Ryan Walters as the coach. You want that to happen, and I think that's possible. You look at Ryan Brown, who's going to be or Brownie, whatever it is, as the quarterback of the Purdue Boilermakers. He was the 60th ranked quarterback by 24/7 in high school. He appeared in one game against Northwestern on November 18th last year, completed 12 of 16 passes for 104 yards, and he also rushed 21 times for 85 yards. I know this is kind of a tricky situation for a defensive coordinator because you don't really have much to scout from in this game. Because number one, Graham Harrell is out at Purdue as offensive coordinator, so there's going to be a first-time-ish play caller for the Purdue Boilermakers, and you have a new quarterback. So that's kind of the one area where you can be like, oh, that's a little dicey coming from a strategy standpoint. But you look at the dogs that Illinois has on that defensive side of the ball. Xavier Scott, he has a massive opportunity to get increase that lead on the amount of interceptions that he has, the most in the Big Ten in this game. This is a game where you can do some trick coverages, make Ryan's day hell, both Ryan's hell, in Ryan Walters and Ryan Brown. So this is a game where Aaron Henry can kind of pull out some tricks in the bag, get some different blitz coverages, and just kind of settle in as a defense. Then offensively, you look at everything that Luke Altmaier has done this year. Only one interception against Penn State, and this is a game where he can cement himself as one of the greats. Where you're not going to let a game like Purdue just change your entire season. Where you can just be like, you know what, I'm a certified winner here at Illinois, and this is a game where you can really cement that.
Yeah, with the change to Brown, like Purdue wasn't a very good passing team coming into this game. And now, from the various Purdue folks I've been speaking to over the past week, Brown doesn't look like he has much of an arm. So I hope it's a good thing that it really looks like, we can kind of focus in on what's already Illinois' weakness, right? That rush defense. We know we can zero in on that part because the arm of the receiving of Purdue is not really going to be as much of a threat. I agree. The fact that we don't know much about this quarterback could cause issues as opposed to having plenty of scouting tape over the whole season on Hudson Card. But as you said, as long as Illinois plays their game, the coaches are amped up for it. Brett Bielema and Aaron Henry are reminding these guys of 44-19 all week long. And Purdue's going to come out there and they're going to try to throw that first punch. Purdue needs this game. If you take a look at their next 3 games, there's a very real chance that Purdue's going to finish this season 1-11, or maybe the optimistic version of their season is 2-10. So they need this game. What Illinois needs to do is go up 2 scores. I think the minute you go up 2 scores on this Purdue Boilermakers team, their will dies. They give up. I saw it against Wisconsin. They never were even in the Notre Dame game. And so I think the key is just be aggressive and be able to end this game in the second quarter and then just run it up.
Yeah, I mean, it's all going to be of who can take that first big punch early on, and I think that's Illinois definitely. But Illinois has to prove it. I mean, you look at Purdue's running back, Devin Mockabee, 362 yards and a touchdown this year. And you think of a game last year that really kind of discouraged me, and that was the Nebraska game last year where Heinrich Harburg really did numbers on the Illini and the Nebraska offense, where they were just running the ball, and that was going to be the game plan for that Illini defense. You hope that in this game where Penn State really did numbers on the Illini in terms of rushing defense and rushing offense, you kind of hope that Illinois is able to set that tone physically, and that's going to be a mental mindset thing from the early onset. Purdue doesn't have the bodies that Illinois does. Purdue doesn't have a J.C. Davis on the offensive side, and defensively they don't have a Seth Coleman. So you got to just be that physical, dominant team from the get-go and really just destroy all the hope that Purdue may have initially in this game.
It's wild when you think about it. When was the last time we went up against another Big Ten team being favorites by this much? I mean, a 22.5-point favorite is what like Ohio State is used to when it comes to interconference games. Illinois being a 22-point favorite is much. But, again, that's why I'm glad in a certain way that it's Purdue. Because if it was another team that's just poor, like Rutgers during their bad years or whatnot, you run that risk of overlooking and thinking more about Michigan and scouting ahead. But in this regard, with it being Purdue and the drama between Ryan Walters and Brett Bielema, I just don't see that happening. And as long as there's a 99% chance, as long as Illinois stays to their game script, that we're going to be celebrating Saturday with a record of 5-1.
You mentioned how big Illinois was favored, so I immediately thought Illinois versus Northwestern in 2022. Illinois would have probably been more than a 22-point favorite, but no. Illinois was 8-4 at that point, and Northwestern was 1-11, and Illinois won 41-3. That was still only a 15.5-point favorite. So historically, this doesn't happen a lot. So, I thought for sure it'd just be 2022, and we'd figure figure that out. But no, it is not. I don't know how far back you have to go. Maybe 2007 in one of those like dominant Illinois football teams. But this just shows what Vegas thinks of the Illini, which is a really good thing, and it shows how bad they think Purdue is. And wouldn't surprise me as we get closer to this game that that line may jump a little bit even further because of the quarterback change. Nebraska at the voice of college football says the problem for Purdue is Hudson Card isn't the issue, lol. They had more penalty yards than total offense against Nebraska. I mean, yeah, they are an undisciplined team, and that shows how Ryan Walters has coached this particular group. And that's why you got rid of the offensive coordinator, Graham Harrell. That's why there's all sorts of changes for this Purdue Boilermakers team, and Illinois has to be the one to take advantage of that. And this will be the next step of Brett Bielema, where you don't lose games where you shouldn't. Like, yes, Vanderbilt and Bama, those kind of games do happen, but Vanderbilt is a 6-6 bowl team in the SEC, in my opinion. You don't lose to teams that are going to be like 1 or 2 wins on the season. You don't want to be one of their feathers in the cap.
It's just wild to me. I spoke to a Purdue insider yesterday, and he was like, I asked him, what's happening? What's gone wrong? And the things he kept repeating were really bad coaching, bad tackling. And it's crazy to me. From 2 years ago, like, our defense led by Ryan Walters was so strong. We never had an issue tackling. We were one of the strongest tackling teams in the country, arguably the best defense in the country. But that Purdue job is hard. It's one of the more difficult jobs in the Power 2, if not the Power 4. And, I don't begrudge him for taking the job. Anytime you're a defensive coordinator and you're offered a Big Ten position, you have to take it. This is more on Purdue. You need to let a guy like Ryan Walters train up at Toledo for a year or two. Let him prove it down there, at a smaller level school. Jeff Vroom is, in my opinion, a top 10 coach in the entire country. That's why he was able to have the success he had at Purdue. Once he left, the fact that Purdue really didn't take into account just how difficult of a position that was, they're paying for it now. And paying for it in the tune that it could cost Purdue up to $25 million, I read, in order to buy out Ryan Walters and his staff. And Purdue is not Ohio State. They're kind of like us in the sense where $25 million is not easy just to call up a couple donors to take care of. That's a lot of money, and Purdue's going to have to start this process all over again.
I mean, the worst thing to ever happen to Purdue is happening currently, where Purdue is a complete afterthought, a joke of a program right now, and then you look right down south in the state in Bloomington, Indiana, and Curt Cignetti turning Indiana into at least 1 year wonder. We don't know what exactly it'll look like once the warts start showing and the recruiting starts to be an issue because NIL dollars shift to basketball. There's all sorts of things that I need to see more of from Curt Cignetti to be a success in Bloomington, Indiana. But Purdue, you have to hire a legitimate head coach before he is thrusted into that position. Especially in today's world of Big Ten dollars being so big, you can hire from a wider pool than ever before. You can get a Big 12 coach, you can get an ACC coach, you can get one of those Pac-2 kind of coaches as well. You don't have to rely on, well, we got to moneyball this, we got to find the MAC coach, we got to find the defensive or offensive coordinator that we really love. Maybe that's the answer for the program, and then he'll blossom and we'll hire his protege. That's not how this works anymore. You've got to show the dollars. You got to show that you are a big-time program by hiring correctly from the get-go, and Purdue went risky with this in hiring its defensive coordinator. Do I think Ryan Walters is one of the best defensive coordinators out there? Absolutely. But whenever you look at a head coach, you got to be a CEO, and so far he is failing in that CEO approach.
And Jeremy Warner in his Illini Inquirer podcast made a really, really good point in the sense where once he went to Purdue, he could no longer count on Brett Bielema's advice. Brett Bielema in a lot of ways was a mentor towards Ryan Walters, building him towards this job. But when you take on the rival school of Brett Bielema, no longer can you call Brett up and be like, hey, What should I do here? What should I do there? Because Brett's
How do
going to
I
pick
beat
up the
Wisconsin, Brett? Can you tell me?
he'll pick up the phone, but he's not going to tell you anything meaningful.
He'll be
And
like, "Oh yeah, it's a process, Ryan."
and the fact that he should have hired a more experienced assistant coaching staff. Like there should have been at least one or two head coaches on that staff, just so he can bounce ideas around with. Like a lot of his hires were from Illinois, right? A lot of the guys he brought was from the Illini. He needed other views, another opinions, another way of doing things. Because right now, I don't know who he's going to figure this out. The players apparently have quit on him. If you listen to a lot of the Purdue podcasts, when these guys are watching these games all the time, it's wild. I mean, he may not survive year two, and I would actually
Yeah,
lean there's a greater than 50% chance that he doesn't.
yeah. I'm going to use an analogy here. Like those recipes that a grandma makes that like nobody ever can replicate because like she's like, oh, a pinch of flour here, a little bit of sugar, here we go, and then when the aunts and your mom try to make those recipes, it never really comes out the same. And Ryan Walters is like, well, I mean, I saw what he did here with this recruiting. I see what he did here with this coaching style. I see here, but it's not the exact recipe. And he's just trying to get all the aunts and uncles to be like, hey, maybe you saw something that I didn't in the Illinois football program. And but you need other grandmas in there that know some recipes of how to make the best biscuits. That's what Purdue does not have right now. It's just a bunch of people trying to imitate things they have seen in their own particular programs. And he thought he had an innovative guy in Graham Harrell. He was highly touted as an offensive coordinator and a quarterback coach. And yes, it matriculated with getting Hudson Card, but it didn't really do anything on the football field of note.
Yeah, I mean, they had a highly regarded transfer class coming in, and from everyone I've spoken to, they fumbled that. The offensive line has not looked great. They lost their one of their best defensive linemen. Obviously, they lost the wide receiver. I forget his name. He went on to, I believe, the SEC. They they recruited really well, but now everything's seemingly coming crashing down. I mean, they've
They've
lost.
dropped some 4 stars.
Exactly. Yeah. This week they've lost
Hmm.
three of their commitments for next year, and you just wonder that again if Illinois is able to embarrass them tomorrow, and I don't see how they come within 4 or 5 touchdowns their next three games. That's when do you trust that Ryan Walters is going to be able to turn the ship around at this point? I don't think so. I mean, I don't feel bad for Ryan. Ryan collected a lot of money, and I would have done the same thing as he did, but. And of course, let's be honest. As you said, he's a really good defensive coordinator. He's going to find a job somewhere. I'm not worried about that, but it's going to be rebuilding time real soon out in West Lafayette.
Yeah, and I mean, this is the stark difference of Illinois and Purdue, where Illinois, it seemed to be a more slow build throughout this entire process to get where Illinois is at. Yes, there was that peak and then that valley back to back, but it feels like Brett has righted the ship in finding the level of what Illinois football is, where it could be 8 to 9 wins every single year, depending on the schedule. Of course, there's always going to be a year where you might get 7 wins because we play Oregon and Ohio State in the same year, and those are two powerhouse programs that are tough to take punches from. So I think Illinois football is finding its level, finding its development, and Aaron Henry getting that year of experience is absolutely huge. Where he has been with Brett Bielema for a couple years now in that defensive coordinator role, and he's done a great job of developing his own skills and his own traits, and I think that's been the difference in Illinois football from last year. And I just think look at that Kansas game last year versus where Illinois is at now, and being able to only give up 21 points to Penn State, and that's the top 5 program in the country as of right now. That's pretty impressive by Aaron Henry and Barry Lenny Jr. getting his wide receiver crew ready, and that's going to be great for their transfer portal this upcoming year. It feels like Brett Bielema has found himself, and Ryan Walters is almost lost at the desert. Is kind of the difference between Illinois and Purdue, and looking forward to the future.
Speaking of the future, let me ask you a question, Austin. If Illinois wins on Saturday, and they pull off. I don't know how big of an upset it would be against Michigan. I'm actually really curious to see what that spread is going to come out now.
If I were to play guess the lines Bill Simmons style, I would probably say Michigan by a point and a half.
Under a field goal. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at as well. But let's just say they are able to defeat Michigan. Okay, I'm not gonna spout out crazy talk here. We're gonna lose to Oregon the week after,
Yeah.
but after that, Illinois I believe is going to be favored in pretty much every game. Maybe Rutgers might be a coin flip since the game is in New Jersey. But let's say this is not the typical Illinois season where they bungle and lose games that they shouldn't lose. All of a sudden, you're talking about Illinois being 10-2 with their only losses coming to Oregon, who at that point may be undefeated or maybe one loss on Saturday, we'll find out, and Penn State, who has a very easy schedule. I mean, they're trying to hype up this USC game this upcoming weekend as if it's a top 10 matchup, and I'm just not hearing it. If your only two losses are against a one-loss Penn State team and a one-loss Oregon team, you know how to really help recruiting? Sneak in the college football playoff, because you would have an argument as that fourth team.
Yeah, I think you would be booking plane tickets as an Illini fan to either Athens, Georgia, or Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Yikes.
Yes, yikes. Yikes indeed. Jalen Milroe would do numbers against Illinois' defense. But that's beside the point. At least you would be invited to the party. Illinois football would be invited to the party over the likes of Iowa, Wisconsin. Indiana, we'll see what happens there. I mean, that could be the team that steals Illinois' spot.
I don't know about you, but
Illinois
I'm going to
is
be
10 and
rooting
2.
for Nebraska hard in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Those Hoosiers need to get humbled real quick, because I genuinely think on a neutral field, Illinois is the superior team to Indiana. I watched the last two games that the Hoosiers have played, and they're good. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think they're the complete team that Illinois is. You take a look at their schedule. There's 10 teams in the Big Ten that would be 6-0 right now with that sort of schedule.
Oh, that's gonna be a fun Twitter matchup the week prior. The Husker fans who are already how we know they are and what we've seen when we had them, versus the Hoosier basketball fans who are like, oh my, we have a football program. All right, let me type it up something crazy. I mean, that's gonna be a fun Twitter matchup between those two fan bases. But yeah, I mean, I want Dylan Raiola to throw 5 touchdowns against Indiana and humble them a little bit. But I mean, that's just the crazy world that we're living in, is that Illinois and Indiana are the second tier teams in this Big Ten right now, over even Michigan State, and Aiden Childs. Yes, we play them later on in the season, and it's just wild to think of that. Everyone thought that college football would be so broken based on this season because of the 12-team playoff, NIL, the transfer portal, all of these factors. They're like, oh, this is just going to reward the Alabamas and the Ohio States of the world. Could those two teams wind up hoisting the trophy at the very end of the season? Yes. But we have seen a season like none before. Maybe 2007 would be the one that can honestly think that it's pretty similar, and both Illinois good that year, good this year kind of thing. But the amount of upsets and the amount of talent that is across the country means that every game you have to play your best football. And I think a lot of fan bases have been dreaming of this day where you look at Alabama and you're like, you know what, we have a legit shot here, at least in SEC country. Or Ohio State, I mean, they haven't played anybody this year. Maybe we can upend them this year. I mean, that's the kind of world we are living in the world of college football, and man, it's exciting.
And not to beat a dead horse here, that just shows you, for a program like Purdue and like Illinois, how important picking the right leader is. When Brett was hired, this was the best case scenario for Illinois fans. Hey, have us capable of winning 8-9 games, show up to every game and not feel like we get blown out. Show up, be able to go to a pseudo whiteout at Penn State against a top 8 team in the country and, be within a touchdown with 2 minutes left in the game. Everything that we asked for in a head coach, Right now, we have, because we have an experienced coach who has been in the industry for so long, who has a Rolodex of everybody who's learned, who's been humbled. He had a lot of success early. He got humbled a bit, taking on another very tough job in Arkansas, which, by the way, since he's left, it's not like anyone else has had much success down there either. Like, that genuinely is one of the toughest jobs. Then he goes up, learns a bit from the greatest coach of all time, Bill Belichick. And then he knew he was ready. He's ready for another opportunity. The Illinois job came open. He expressed his interest in the job. And, Josh Whitman, let's be honest. I don't know. I don't recall your answer on this, Austin, but Brett Bielema wasn't even in my top 3 candidates I wanted hired here. Grant, I changed my mind once I heard his opening press conference. Like, I'm like, oh, this guy gets it. But, I wanted Lance Leipold. I wanted, what's the Army coaches, Jeff Monk?
Yeah, Monk.
Like, those were the guys like I wanted. Like, for me, Brett Bielema, I still had the bad taste in my mouth after what happened, the way he abruptly left Wisconsin and took the Arkansas job. But now you kind of see that Brett is at the stage of his career where I think he's settled. He's tasted success. He knows. I don't think he's going to be chasing the big money at a big program anymore. He knows the downside of that, and he knows that if he can make us bowl eligible for the next 6 to 10 years, we'll build a statue out for this guy. We'll name the field after him. And I think, we're very fortunate. And that's the type of guy that Purdue needs to find, an old alum, a guy who's proven himself and who understands the system now, and that understands that, winning at Illinois or winning at Purdue is not the same as winning at Ohio State or winning at Michigan.
Yeah, Brett, he wasn't the typical like second chance kind of guy because of the success that he did have at Wisconsin. So I honestly was still a little skeptical because of what happened at Arkansas, where I'm like, oh man, did the college football world just know him? Like, did they learn the book and they knew what was coming? But it really feels like Brett has evolved with the world of college football. Obviously, with the offensive coordinator selection that he made with Barry Lenny Jr. Yes, he hired a what was his name that's currently at Illinois State as his first offensive
Right.
coordinator. But yes, he did notice to learn from his mistakes very quickly,
Exactly.
hire and fire at the right
Exactly.
time. And I think that's a major aspect of how Brett's been successful. Barry Lenny Jr. is nothing like the Wisconsin offenses that he's ever ran before. He could very well just been like, all right, we're running the barge 3 times, and if we don't get 10 yards, we're punting. No, he has adapted to the world of offensive college football. He's adapted in the world of the transfer portal. Because think of it, 2 years ago we just got Luke Altmaier essentially in the transfer portal, and he was like, "All right, we're done. I know what we have." But this past year, he went a little bit deeper in the transfer portal by getting Sledge, by getting J.C. Davis, by getting Priestley. Like he learned to use the transfer portal to more of his advantage, not to rebuild his complete team, but to fill the holes of the best of his ability, and that's including guys like Zachary Franklin as well. I mean, it just feels like Brett is like learning on the job in the best possible way, where there's never going to be a book on him because once you think you've figured out Brett, yes, there are core principles in there. He is going to change some things above that foundation that are going to lead to other teams having trouble figuring out what Brett Bielema is going to do next. And I think that's awesome to have in a head coach. And I just truly feel like he is the right guy for this job. He is a guy that has figured out the heartbeat of Illini Nation, which is something that no Illinois football coach has ever seemed to do. Ron Zook had it just for a mini second, but it feels like Brett Bielema knows the Big Ten area. He knows what makes Illinois fans tick in terms of getting their NIL dollars and getting their iFund dollars. He just truly has a pulse on this fan base, and it's truly great to have him as the leader. And yeah, I don't think he's leaving anytime soon.
The perfect example of what you just explained is in his most recent contract extension. Brett Bielema now has a clause where he can't leave for another Big Ten job. which, according to reports when it came out, he was the one to suggest to put in, because a lot of people were worried that he would jump at the Iowa job once Kirk Ferentz decided to retire, that Iowa would come after him just because of his past history there. Brett recognized that, and recognized that, you know what, this was negative recruiting was being done against him because of this opportunity. What does he do? He basically negates that talk. Like, now it's plenty clear he can't do that even if he wanted to. That's a guy who understands. That's a guy who is here for the long run, and he's shoring up whatever we. Illinois is not an easy job. It's not an easy job. There's a lot of potential here, but from the program that he took over, it was going to be a pretty big climb out of it. He's got us climbing. And, was it faster than some of us thought? Yeah. And we were at 1.7-1 in his second season. And, it just tells you the fickleness of the fan base, in the sense that we won 5 games. No, what was it? 5 games?
Yeah, 5 games last year.
5, 8, and 5. Normally in the previous years, we'd be content with that, but we were almost disappointed coming into this year. Now we're hopefully about to be at 5 wins already after tomorrow. And then we're staring at, at this point, 7 games would be a disappointment if that's what we ended the year with. So I know this is kind of a Brett Bielema love fest episode. This is what it's turned into. But I think this is the perfect week to really talk about it, because we see our rivals to the east struggling just so much with the choice that they had 2 years ago and making the wrong choice. So it's okay to just kind of, be appreciative of what we have.
I mean, you look at Illinois' counterparts in the Big Ten, where Illinois tries to gauge themselves, whether it be in basketball or in football, mostly football. But Iowa, that offense, even with a new offensive coordinator, hasn't really done much. And you think, oh, that's Kirk Ferentz's DNA now. It truly feels like it, even after his son left the offensive coordinator role. It feels like Iowa offense is still as broken as it ever was. Purdue is struggling mightily. Indiana will, again, like I said earlier in the episode, we'll see what happens in the long term of them. And Wisconsin, Luke Fickell, you think that he would have been much better and much more suited to take a Wisconsin program who has a lot of resources to that next level, where they're talking about they're going to be with maybe with Penn State year to year and getting college football playoff appearances. And that's not even close to happening with the way Wisconsin has looked so far this year. And yes, you have Washington had it in. I guess we'd see what happens if Illinois and Washington faced off against each other this year. I think it'd be a very good game. But Jed Fish really doesn't scare me as a head coach. Look at what he did in Arizona. And yes, it was a good team, but nothing that would scare me. So it just feels like Illinois is in the driver's seat of all of these programs where we're behind at such a big point. When I'm saying behind, think of a marathon starting point where teams are on the starting blocks and you are way, way, way behind, where it takes even a while just to get to the starting point.
And everyone else gets a 30-second head start.
Yeah, Illinois is ahead at this moment. And that can shift in 2 days, yes, but right now it feels really positive to be an Illini football fan.
So let me ask you a question. Obviously we mentioned Indiana a little bit. Do you think Kurt Cignetti could be a one and done?
It depends. Say Mississippi State or something, because it seems like they're fed up with their college football program right now. But if there were some big time donors in Starkville, I think that you could easily draw a coach from the Big Ten to the SEC still to this day, because the SEC still has that allure, even more than the Big Ten at this point, where you can go up against the Alabamas, you can go up against the Georgias, and then now Texas and Oklahomas. It kind of feels like the SEC is the only game in town that could potentially poach away a Big Ten coach, maybe a Florida State or something like that. Those outskirt teams from the Big Two that are still really blue blood kind of programs in the world of college football. But that list is pretty small of a school that can take away a coach from the Big Ten.
Yeah, I just wonder because like Signetti has a lot of what's like the Kalen DeBoer type of vibes to him, and you know, congrats to Indiana. But you know, I don't mean this demeaning to Indiana because I would argue that Illinois could be in the same boat. Although I think Illinois is a slightly better job because they're in state competition. But the reason I don't see Brett leaving anywhere is because of where he's at in his career and the past experiences that he's had. Kurt Signetti is not one of those. Like Kurt is still, he's never been at the top level, and he seems like a very excitable, aggressive guy. I can see him have this sort of mindset where he may want to level up while he can. And you know, I mean, you don't think Lance Leipold, maybe a part of him wonders if he should have taken a bigger job if it were offered to him, bigger than Kansas a couple years ago? I think Signetti's one of those guys where he knows he's hot right now. And Indiana, you know, congrats to the season that they're having. I think there's multiple factors of why they're having the season that they are. But like even, I'm not saying a program like Washington, but you know, like a top 5, 6 program who just looks at Kurt Signetti's results. And you know, if you don't know what they are, ask him. Or as he says, Google it. He wins. He wins everywhere he goes. If I'm a program like, again, I can't think off the top of my head. Maybe Mississippi State is one. I just don't know what his recruiting is like down south. I know he's more so recruited out east, I believe it was. But a school out there like a North Carolina, you know, if Mac Brown is ready to go, North Carolina has a lot of resources. And in my, like, that is a program that's capable of winning whatever's left of the ACC. I would throw a lot of money at Kurt. And I don't know if Kurt is just completely satisfied ending his career in Bloomington.
I mean, he was at Alabama. That was his final spot before taking a head coaching job. That was from 2007
right.
to
Yeah,
2010.
right.
And then he was at NC State from 2000 to 2006. So he has a lot of arms in a lot of different places. So there's a guy by the name of Hugh Freeze that seems to be on the hot seat at Auburn, and if he's familiar with the state of Alabama, that might be a job to take because Auburn is always looking for that up and comer guy that can take them to the next level or the perceived next level of whatever Auburn thinks, and that Indiana should be a little worried here because this is a mercenary. Kurt Signetti is a mercenary, and that's not a negative thing
Right.
in the world of college football. That's kind of the way of the jungle unless you get a Kirk Ferentz or a Brett Bielema kind of guy in there. And other than that, they're all mercenaries. I mean, Nick Saban left Michigan State. It's just the way of the jungle. And Kurt Signetti, he has no allegiances anywhere. He's kind of coached in every conference now that he's been in the Big Ten.
I'm just thinking, now that you brought that up, weren't Signetti and Kalen DeBoer both assistant coaches under Saban on that same Alabama team? Like,
Possibly.
I'm thinking about that as a rivalry, him going to Auburn. Like, that would be fun. And, you know, it's stories like that that make college football fun. But, yeah, I mean, it's just one of those where 100% it's obvious Indiana made the right call. They've hired someone who's brought energy in that program that hasn't had energy in a very, very long time. But, you know, unfortunately, like this is what Purdue's got to look at. You know, they've got to find a guy who's been a head coach before and really they can't go wrong with this hire because if they decide to move on after this year, they're going to be $25 million in the hole already. And if you're a Big Ten school, you can't go cheap again. You just can't. So if this costs you $25 million, I think Ryan Walters makes something like $4 million a year. I saw the next guy you're going to have to pay $6, $7, if not $8 million for, because otherwise, if Indiana continues on their trajectory, Notre Dame is always good. You're going to be the forgotten program in the state of Indiana.
Jason comments, give all the love to Colton Jason. Hope he's doing well. Jason says, let's hope they keep Walters because we don't want them bringing Alex Golesh up. Could you imagine if Purdue went former Illini assistant back to another former Illini assistant? That'd be hilarious. But yeah, Alex Golesh is doing a pretty decent job at South Florida in the American Athletic Conference. He's 9-9 there, and of course he was the Illinois assistant under Tim Beckman and Bill Cubitt from 2012 all the way up to 2015 in various roles for the Illini. Alex Golish is doing great. Is doing a great job. But I think you need to look bigger if you are Purdue than Alex Golish. Alex still needs to, I think, do it a little bit more as a head coach. He's been 7-6 in 2023, and then in 2024 he was 2-3. He did win the Boca Raton Bowl last year, but yeah, that's a name that definitely should be on the horizon in the future for Big Ten fans is Alex Golish as a head coach. And then Jason continues on and says, let's just break the 14-year drought of beating Purdue in Champaign. Can't believe 2010 was the last time. I was a sophomore in high school when that happened, which is just crazy to think about.
You think that's crazy to think about? 2010, you were a sophomore in high school. I graduated high school in 2002, so I don't want to hear that's crazy. Also, the comment before, Alex, what's up, Alex? He says subscribe. Absolutely, guys. If you're watching
subscribe
this,
to the GOAT, yes.
Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. This channel is going to go out to other Illini fans. We're so close to 1,000. So close. If we can hit 1,000 by the time basketball season starts, that'll be amazing. That'll be amazing. That's what we need to do.
And continue to go to Armchair Illini. They are just cranking out the goods. It feels like every minute Kirkland and Alex are publishing some article, which is just wild. They are typing machines over there. So any Illini content, if there's even a topic that you even thought about, I wonder if they've written about this. They've probably written about it. So just continue to go to Armchair Illini. Jason says, Indiana has to be worried he has no marriage or past attachment to Indiana. Agreed. The mercenary Kurt Signetti. That's the name of his game. And then Check It Out 7 says, great game for Luke to air it out and open up a massive lead on the Boilermakers. So, yeah, great. This would be a great game for that to happen. I expect Zachary Franklin to have a great game, and then Malik Elzy. I expect some things out of him today, tomorrow, just because there's going to be a lot of second team kind of looks in the second half, I'm guessing.
Like I said, go up 2 scores. Break their wills immediately. And this is not a team that can come back and score. I don't think they're motivated enough. And so I genuinely think we can end this game before the first quarter is over, especially if Barry Lenny Jr. continues his masterclass of opening drives that he's had essentially all season long. Force Purdue for a 3-and-out on their first drive, and then all of a sudden come back and score again. All of a sudden it's 14-0 with 6-7 minutes left in the first quarter. I think we're well on our way at that point. And despite being well on our way, I don't think Brett and the staff, they're going to relax at all. I think Purdue is going to feel the wrath of Bielema and maybe the disrespect he may never admit to feeling over Ryan Walters' exit.
Sonny, do you have a prediction for this game?
My prediction I made this morning was, I think I said 37-10. And it could be in the 40s if Purdue keeps it close up until halftime. And I'm only saying it's not in the 40s because I genuinely think that we're going to break Purdue in the first quarter. And so Illinois is going to go hard for 3 quarters, maybe 3.5 quarters. But then at some point it's like, okay, let's give these freshmen some run. Let's give the 2s and 3s some experience on the field, because the next 2 games, those are going to be tough ones. Michigan and Oregon, and we want our guys to be well rested. But I think we should easily cover the spread, whatever the spread is. If the spread is, whatever, just take it. I don't think Illinois is going to take it easy. If by some chance Purdue scores first, jump on the live bet for Illinois. If you want, this is not gambling advice. This is just me talking. But I think we better have an easy win on Saturday, and I'm going to enjoy every bit of it. This is not going to be a type of game where it's like, ho-hum, we beat a bad Power 4 team. It didn't really mean much. No. If we blow out Purdue, I'm going to be enjoying every minute of it.
Rivalry blowouts matter, so I'm going with 45-10. And I think Khalil Valentine just breaks one at the very end to just secure that 40-point burger that we put on the Purdue Boilermakers. So
I love it.
um, that is my prediction. Sonny, thank you for a wonderful episode. And again, subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow Armchair Illini and Illinicast on Twitter. And yes, go Illini. We'll see what happens after 2:30 tomorrow in Illinois and Purdue. Thank you, Sonny.
ILL.